Welcome to the Primo's Musings podcast.
Good evening. Hey, Mel, how are you doing, sir?
I'm very well. Sitting here in the Horse and Frog in Holyoke, Colorado.
Holyoke, Colorado. So we do have a similar name by that in Massachusetts, Holyoke, Mass. So it looks like, is it the same spelling too?
Same spelling, and it's actually about 7.5 miles from a town called Amherst, which we also have a town called Amherst, Mass.
Where we have the UMass
Yeah.
University there. So
Uh,
you're right now in Colorado. I know in your blogs, the last time we talked, I think you've pretty much gone through Kansas and Nebraska. I had a chance to read all your blogs, and give me a quick thing of how many miles you guys have done so far. The last time it was 1,400.
yeah, I think we're at about 2,000 as of today. Um, yeah,
That's more than half.
we crossed the halfway point 2 days ago.
Excellent, excellent. I think starting from Washington all the way through Pennsylvania and Ohio and Kansas and Nebraska, and you're in Colorado. So looks like after we last spoke, that was the one where you were in a tent with rain and wind, gusty winds. But right now, this is much more where you see you're in a bar. So I think the last time we talked, you were in Hutchinson, Kansas, and it was a very well received blog, Mel. Everybody I've talked to have talked about it, mentioned it, whether it's Dan or Pete or my wife. I think everyone had a lot of things to say about the journey and your stories that you shared in that, not only in your the podcast, but also how detailed were the blogs. And I keep sending them the links to the blogs. So, and I'm actually going to take all the blogs that you have done so far. I'm going to actually go to attach to our podcast so people can actually go and see the blogs directly themselves. So, looks like let's quickly talk about your blog on Riders of the Storm. I think you're probably referencing the Doors song, if
Yep.
I'm not mistaken. So, talk a little bit about some of the. I think you've mentioned it before. I mean, some of the wins that were coming up, and then you want to talk about a little bit about the city park you guys were camped in Washington, Kansas, and the tornado storms that watch you guys were under.
Yeah, so when we were in Washington, Kansas, we were under tornado watch. We had winds of 30 to 40 miles an hour. My tent was, I think you recall, barely upright. I had to push it by the wall of the tent up. We had a tornado shelter in the park, and were advised that if a siren blew, it was our responsibility to get into that tornado shelter, not to take anything with us, just get in there. And thankfully, we didn't encounter any sirens or tornadoes, um, but it was close. And actually, that night was the night of the very massive tornado in St. Louis, which took a number of lives. So it's a real thing out in Kansas, and I'll tell you something: the winds blow in Kansas nonstop. That we
Wow.
had winds in our face for 140 some miles over 2 days that were exhausting, literally hard to ride your bicycle in. But we managed to get through. And then as we came into Nebraska, the winds kind of shifted, and the last number of days we've had tailwinds, which 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 all of a sudden it's like effortless riding. You can do 60 miles and barely break a sweat. So
Yeah, so I think you left. I think Washington, Kansas, and then you went to Mankato, Kansas. I think, and you did mention something about the weather was spectacular, but for the wind, I think. And you want to talk a little bit about those wind farms that you encountered along the way?
yeah, so obviously, what a great place to have a wind farm where the wind never stops. And as we would, each ridge that we would approach would have dozens and dozens of these modern day windmills. And then the other thing we were seeing on the highway, we were on a small highway, 2 lanes going either way, but cars are traveling at 60 to 70 miles an hour, US 6 actually, which goes right through Hartford. And So we know it well. And we were seeing trucks transporting the propellers of the wind mills. And what's amazing is you look at these windmills and they're enormous, right? And you look at them, and then when you see one actually at ground level, they're about 100 feet long, and they have special trucks that transport the wings. They're one at a time, and it's almost two separate trucks suspended between, at the either end of the wing, and there's nothing in between. It's pretty amazing. Anyway, so they must generate a huge amount of power here using that wind, which is smart, right? I mean, it's a renewable energy, and they're in farmland. I'm sure the farmers are leasing their property. Is in my legal practice, I've had experience dealing with wind farms, so I have a general sense of how the real estate structures work. They're supplementing their income by leasing the space for a windmill to energy companies. So win-win for everybody.
Yeah. So the one thing I would actually want to mention to all the listeners is that there's and I'm going to be attaching Mel's link to the blog. There's a blog called How Many Roads, and I encourage you to uh, see the pictures of all the wind, um, you know, all the wind farms that the picture that you had, Mel. I think I would strongly encourage folks to actually, uh, look at that. Now, of course, this is a famous one. I really enjoyed the title, Toto. I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore. I think once you went to Nebraska, I think you channel a little bit of the Wizard of Oz there. So I think looks like the immediately the winds changed, and then it changed. The landscape changed from to like an open prairie, like you mentioned. So um, how was the experience riding in Nebraska compared to Kansas?
So Kansas, as I've mentioned in my blogs, a huge farmland, cultivated fields. When we got into Nebraska, we immediately kind of got into much hillier terrain and much less cultivated fields and more open prairie with a lot of cattle ranches. We were seeing thousands and thousands and thousands of heads of cattle, both in the open range as well as in what they call feedlots, which are sort of the last step before they go to the slaughter. And I am not a meat eater, so not all that exciting. But the rest of the guys on the trip were salivating for steak and managed. They got their steak when we got to a city in Nebraska, McCook, and they all went to a. I went with them. I had fish, but they all had barbecued ribs and prime rib, and it's like. But there's a lot of cattle being raised in Nebraska. And Western Nebraska is pretty hilly.
Hmm.
As I said, open prairie. I mean, there are cornfields. There's still a lot of corn in Nebraska being grown in Western Nebraska, but there's also a lot of open fields that look like they may have looked 100, 200, 300, 400 years ago.
Yeah, and looks like you're back. You served up some awesome quesadilla apps and fettuccine with the homemade puttanesca sauce and broccoli for main course. So it looks like after a 60-mile ride, I'm sure everyone in your crew appreciated the great food that you made as well. Um, yeah. So the other one, I really thought you touched upon this memorial about for those who served and gave their battles, and that include like a tank and a fighter jet. Want to mention a little bit about that? I mean, what it was and when uh, you know, I think the connection with Russian MiG-15.
Yeah, so we've seen in just about every town there are memorials to the veterans and to the lost soldiers who gave their life for freedom in this country. And I've been taking pictures of them and appreciative of those efforts of soldiers who served and gave their life to keep us free. And then in Franklin, Nebraska, we came upon this very interesting memorial where they had a tank, they had a personnel carrier, and then they had a Lockheed P-80 jet. Just the whole thing, whole jet in the park, and a monument that described the origin of that jet, that it was a Lockheed P-80, that it was involved in the very first all-jet dogfight in 1950, must have been in Korea, in which a pilot by the name of Lieutenant Russell took down a MiG fighter. So it's quite, it's very interesting. The other thing that the monument said was that the plane cost $98,000 to produce. Now, that was a state of the art jet in 1950. If you know anything about what it costs to produce a state of the art fighter jet today, it's just unbelievable that the cost has gone from, $98,000 to hundreds of millions of dollars, in part because of the advancing avionics, electronics, and the like. I mean, that fighter jet is a little bit like a Volkswagen compared to the fighter jets of today that are probably more like a Tesla or something. So it was
Yep.
impressive to see. I'm a fan of aviation, and so I took note of that. And then today being Memorial Day, thought it was appropriate to rest my blog and just show photographs of the various memorials that we've seen as we cross the country, starting with the Washington Monument and ending with the most recent monument here in Holyoke, Colorado.
Sure, sure. I mean, I think I do want to mention one thing that today, I mean, we're doing the blog on Memorial Day, and I think Mel's latest blog has pictures of all the memorials he has collected, and I will attach the link as well to the podcast. I think we do want to remember all those who sacrificed their lives to protect this country, to its great country. So today, as the nation remembers all these soldiers on Memorial Day, it's very, very uh, um, I would say inspiring. And I think I was actually doing some research on your blog on the P-80. I think looks like this. I think it was. I think you mentioned it was like Russell Brown. I think,
Yep.
and apparently it was the world's first jet versus jet killed by downing a MiG-15. And I was able to look up that as well when after reading your blog. I didn't know much about it, but I went and did some research prior to this podcast. So just educating myself on what the P-80 was, and especially during the Korean War, especially it was the America's primary operational jet fighter. So I learned something today through your blog. So as we learn one every day. So um, then quickly, I think you did mention, just like you saw a lot of these windmills, you did talk a little bit about these water towers. It's a fascinating picture of water towers, and it's beautiful sunrise. And if you have a picture, or maybe a sunset, uh, I think you were treated to some of those excellent, beautiful views in Nebraska as well. So these water towers are pretty important, I think, in that part of the country. So you want to talk about a little bit about what they are for at least, especially for those from the Northeast.
Yeah. So every town, literally every town that we ride through, has a water tower. The water towers are many of them are um, kind of older and they look similar. They all have the name of the town painted on them, and they're, I don't know, 75 to 100 feet high. And obviously very important because there's not a lot. We were told in Nebraska, western Nebraska, they get about 22 inches of rain a year, so they rely on aquifer to for their drinking water and to irrigate their farm fields. But they use these water towers obviously for pressure for their homes. And what's cool about them for us is that we're riding 40, 50, 60, 70 miles a day, going through, sometimes we'll go through a town every 10, 15 miles or so, and you can see these water towers 3, 4 miles away. And when you're riding that many miles and you're on a bike for 6 hours at a time, it's nice to have a goal. And those water towers become the goal for each successive town that we go into, because you see them literally first as you're approaching a town, before you see any buildings, before you see a sign for the town or any businesses. You see these water towers way out in the distance, and slowly you come and approach them. And I've estimated that we're seeing them about 4 miles out, which is a treat.
Hmm.
So I've come to be a fan of the water towers for a lot of reasons, including just the way they mark our progress.
Yeah. So I think, and after that, you did mention a little bit about after the water towers. I think you did go and I was looking up here. You walked across to Hunt, Nebraska Lodge, I think, where you met the owner and his wife, a cattle rancher. I want to talk about a big game hunter. I want to talk about some of the hunting trophies he had displayed in the lodge.
Unbelievable. This was a really, truly local individual who we had a chance to spend 45 minutes with. He built this hunting lodge, obviously a very successful cattleman because the hunting lodge is gorgeous. And he's hunted literally all over the world. And he had trophies from all over the world, including New Zealand. And the taxidermy that displayed the animals was remarkable. They were gorgeously displayed. I took some pictures. I think I put up one picture on my blog. And the other thing was he gave us a kind of an inside view of what a Nebraskan thinks about Nebraska and the world. And he
Mm,
funny because he basically kept saying to us, nobody moves to Nebraska, nobody moves to Nebraska. And you don't want, the only people that live in Nebraska are the people that love cold winters, hot summers, and no people. Uh, and he was kind of a crusty guy, but answered all our questions. He told us a lot about the investment that it takes to start a cattle ranch, and every year the investment he makes buying cattle and bringing them to slaughter, and and he lived there his whole life. The only time he ever left the town was for 6 year stint in the Navy in the '60s. Uh, so it was fun. We've tried to meet people and talk to them and learn about their lives, and this was one of those kind of magical moments that we got a chance to talk with someone and just hear about their experience as a Nebraskan.
yeah, very interesting. I mean, I when I started reading some of those stories that you have, I mean, every place that you shared, whether it's in, other in the East Coast or somewhere in the Midwest or somewhere even right where you are in Colorado, the people are the same, as you mentioned, right? The people are the same. They are good people. They're just trying to make a living. And, with all the craziness that you see in the world, I mean, I'm so glad to hear how the view from your the lens, right? I mean, the people in different parts of the country. I think I'm very glad to hear that part of the story that people really need to hear a lot more than all the other negative and polarized world we live in today. So, and especially today being the Memorial Day, and I think you guys are in Holyoke where there's a picture where you had put up where it's dedicated to all the memory of the war veterans. So, which was erected, I think, 1962, and I think it says in memory of Robert and Anna M. White. Okay, that's the last one I saw. Okay, so you're in Holyoke, Colorado. So, what do you have going over the next few days on your journey to the Pacific Northwest?
Yeah, so our next big destination is Fort Collins, Colorado, where we'll spend a night, over 2 nights, one rest day. Fort Collins is a city that I've been to before. It's a big city, about 140,000 people. Colorado State University is situated there, so it has a great college vibe to it. A lot of breweries, um, and I'm really looking forward to going back there and enjoying the breweries and hopefully seeing some live music. I haven't seen any live music since I left the East Coast, and there's a big music scene in Fort Collins. And Fort Collins is in the foothills of what they call the Front Range, which is the early stages of the Rocky Mountains. We'll spend 2 days in Fort Collins, and then on our next day we will ascend to the Continental Divide with a huge 20-mile climb out of Fort Collins, where we'll gain about 3,000, a little bit more than 3,000 feet in elevation over 20 miles. It's through a place called Poudre Canyon, which um, I'm expecting will be one of the highlights of the trip. I've driven it. It's a gorgeous canyon, uh, and it's going to be a hard ride because it's, as I said, 20 miles uphill, no downhill at all until you get through the canyon and to the other side, and then you get a 25-mile descent, which will be a lot of fun. Biggest issue there is just trying to be safe going downhill, but the uphill is going to be tough. And we're all talking about what it's like to ride at altitude. There's some challenges associated with that. So we're all preparing. We're hydrating a lot, talking about how to be sensitive to the symptoms of altitude sickness because you got to be sensitive to that. And so it's going to be a challenge, but really looking forward to spending a couple nights in Fort Collins.
Yep. And then after Fort Collins, where are you off to after Fort
Yeah, we'll
Collins?
work our way toward Wyoming, uh, the Grand Tetons, Yellowstone National Park. We'll spend about, I think, 5 nights in Wyoming. Actually, one of the riders on our ride is from Wyoming, and we're going to camp at her ranch. So it's really looking forward to that. And then we'll head into Montana, to Missoula, Montana, which is where the headquarters of the Adventure Cycling Association is, and their
Mm-hmm.
museum to the organization and its effort to raise cycling as a means of transportation, recreation, and travel. So really looking forward to that. And then from there, it's Idaho and Oregon, and we'll wrap it up.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're already done 2000, but it seems like from what you have done now the challenge. I mean, every place you have gone through is challenge. Like you talked about wins in Kansas, but I do think that you're ready for the challenge, and we're all, like I said, rooting for that. Hearing your story as well as you go through all these famous national parks. So, where can we talk next?
Fort Collins, I'll be there Thursday and Friday night. That would work. I'm not sure after that when the next time. We're going to have pretty sketchy cell coverage in Wyoming, but maybe next Friday night I'll be in.
Yep, I should be. Yeah, I'm going to, going to be out of town, but I will make sure to find a spot by the time. And I think you will be like what? You'll be in Mountain Time, I think, right?
We will be in Mountain Time. I am currently.
So I think that'll work.
I'm 2 hours west of you.
Okay, all right. I should be able to do that on Friday night as well. So I'll pick a time. You tell me what time works for you, like we did today, and then we'll make it happen. And I think for those who are actually, I mean, I'm sure I don't publish the video one. I just publish the audio, but this is a much big contrast from what Mel was talking to me last time, where he had wins, and here he's now sitting in a bar before another long ride. But I think this is a great contrast. Just kind of tells you how life itself is like. It's like at all the great time, the ups and downs of everything. So I'm glad you're able to share the story, Mel. I really appreciate it. I think a lot of people have been. I think I would say really inspired to not just read your blogs, but even listen hear from you. That's more important. And I think my wife said this was probably one of the best podcasts I've done, the one I did before. So I'm trying to one up that one from this one. But I think it was, and in fact, we were at Dan's house the last Saturday, and then my wife mentioned about the blog, and then Dan immediately jumped. Pete immediately jumped. And we're all talking about you. So it's good to know that everybody in Connecticut, I'm sure everybody rest of the world, all your friends are rooting for you to go all the way to the Pacific Northwest, and we are praying for your safety and as you share these wonderful memories across America. So
Super.
So thank
Say
you.
hello to everybody for me. Great time. I enjoy our conversations.
Absolutely. No, I actually learn a lot through your blog. I've learned a lot more about the country, more than I can learn from the internet. So I think sometimes words speak better, clearly better than reading somewhere. So I'm glad, I'm thankful for that, and thank you for that. So with that, we want to give Mel, his time at the bar, the Holyoke bar. And thanks again, and have a good night and safe riding rest of the way. And we'll catch up soon again in a few days. So wait until I hit the stop button.
Thank you for listening. Primo will be back soon.